Hello everyone, today is day 48 of solving a LeetCode problem every day, and today we're going to be doing another JavaScript question where we solve promise time limit. So given an asynchronous function fn and a time t in milliseconds, return a new time-limited version of the input function. Fn takes arguments provided to the time-limited function. So the time limited function should follow these rules. If the function completes within the time limit of t milliseconds, the time limited function should resolve with the result. If the execution of the function exceeds the time limit, the time limited function should reject with the string time limit exceeded. So basically what we're doing is we're creating a function that returns another function, and basically what this return function is going to do, it's going to either execute the function if it can finish within the time limit, and if it can't finish within the time limit, then we just have to return the time limit exceeded. So cool. The way we're going to do this is by using the set timeout function. So if we go to the Mozilla docs, so set timeout, oh, spelled that wrong. We can see here that this function is a method of the window interface. It sets a timer which executes a function or specified piece of code once the timer expires. So one thing to note here is, first of all, set timeout takes a function and a delay, and the delay is in milliseconds. So over here it says that t is going to be passed in milliseconds. So now we know that we don't have to do any conversions there. So the idea is we're going to return a new promise, and this promise can either resolve or reject. And it's going to resolve or reject depending on if the function can complete within the time limit of t milliseconds. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this set timeout function, and this is going to take a callback, and it's also going to take our parameter of delay in milliseconds, so we can just pass it t. And what we're going to do is we're going to cause this to reject with the string time limit exceeded if this executes within t milliseconds, or basically if this has time to execute. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to also assign this to a timer variable just so we can reference it later. Next we have to actually call this fn function right here. Now it does tell us that the function is asynchronous, so it's going to return a promise, and we do need to consume that promise. The problem is we're consuming the promise within this promise over here, so we can't use await because, you know, the async is here. So if I were to say like await fn or whatever and pass in the args and run this should give an error. It says await is only valid in async functions. So where this function is being called, it's not from an asynchronous function, so we have to consume it using .then. And so this is going to pass some type of data, whatever the function returns. And what we want to do is we want to resolve the promise with the data, since that's what it tells us to do, if this can finish executing before this. So this is basically what's going to happen. We're going to create this timer that's going to run in t milliseconds, and then right after that we're going to call this function. And the whole idea is this can either resolve before this rejects or after this rejects. So whatever happens first is how the promise is pretty much going to be, like, you know, finished. It's either going to be resolved first or rejected first, depending on if this function takes longer than this delay. One more thing I'm going to do is also clear the timeout. So we can say, let's just search it up again. So clear set timeout in JavaScript. So it's a clear timeout method, and this takes a timeout ID. And the timeout ID is the identifier of the timeout you want to cancel. And this ID was returned by the corresponding call to set timeout. So in this case, our ID is timer. So we can say clear timeout timer. And what this does is if we resolve the promise, then we just want to, let me actually do this before. But we just clear the timeout in case, any side effects happen. We don't want any unintended side effects. And I guess one thing we can also add is we can also add a catch block. So if any error occurs within this function, then we want to do the same thing. We want to say clear timeout timer, but then we want to reject and pass the error. Or actually we don't, we just say time limit exceeded. I mean, even though that's not the case, but it tells us that whenever we reject, we should reject the string time limit exceeded. So if I run this now, let's see. So expected rejected error. So I mean, I was wrong. This should actually reject with the error and not the string. So let's try passing that instead and submitting this. Cool. So our solution got accepted. Now, as in for time complexity and space complexity, I'm not going to really worry about the details since that really just depends on what this actual function is. But yeah, so yeah, I'm not going to really worry about those specific details. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I should mention. Yeah, no. So yeah, that's my solution for the day.